Hi there, Chris from Stone Age Gamer here, and welcome back to the Gratuitous Rainbow Spectrum, where we're tackling the Nintendo Report. This is a series where we're looking back at all of Nintendo's intellectual properties and checking in, giving them a health rating in alphabetical order. Today, we've made it to the letter G. We're going to talk about, well, all kinds of games that start with the letter G. How are the likes of Golden Sun and Geist and other such games doing? Let's find out in the Nintendo Report.
First up, we have Geist. Nintendo is known for a lot of things, but horror-themed first-person shooters ain't one of them. That's why Geist was such a neat diversion for the company. During the GameCube era, Nintendo really started dipping their toes into getting more mature titles on their platforms, and Geist was one of those exclusives that, while not overly successful, left an impression on many who played it. You take control of a ghost who can inhabit anything from enemy guards to dog food bowls. Why dog food bowls? Well, because apparently scared beings are easier to inhabit. Scare a dog, become a dog. Then be a scary dog to scare a person, become a person. Fun. That's all the rating is, I guess ironically, basically dead. Geist was a great idea, but its execution wasn't the home run Nintendo had hoped for. Not that the game was bad, just that it wasn't as polished as the metric ton of other first-person shooters and horror games coming out on other platforms around that time. To say nothing of the fact that the GameCube controller wasn't exactly the best thing in the world for FPS games, what with that weird C-stick instead of a proper thumbstick. Still, it's an interesting experiment that clearly had a ton of untapped potential. But its abysmal sales and almost complete lack of even cult-level following after all these years means this game's likely to be the only one of its kind. Next, we have Glory of Heracles. This RPG series is another one of those games that's hard to tell who actually owns it. I'm fairly confident that Nintendo has at the very least a stake in the brand, but it also seems Data East is involved in some way. Regardless, it appeared in Smash Bros., so Nintendo's ownership seems strong enough to land it here on this list. Glory of Heracles is an RPG set in an alternate reality version of Greek mythology. It started back in 1987 on Famicom, followed up by a short string of sequels. Its health rating is basically dead. Nintendo finally decided to bring the series to the West in Glory of Heracles for the Nintendo DS. It didn't perform very well though, and the series hasn't been heard from since outside of the obligatory Smash Bros. Reference. It's one of those RPG series that seems like someone out there really wants it to be a huge success, but for whatever reason simply refuses to catch on. I wouldn't say there's no chance of it ever reappearing again, but for now, it's pretty much on ice. On the other hand, Golden Sun caught on just fine. It's an RPG series that started life on the Game Boy Advance. Originally developed by Camelot, it quickly earned itself a very enthusiastic following thanks to its endearing characters, story, and very impressive visuals, considering the hardware. The battles themselves have this really cool pseudo 3D scrolling effect to them. It looks fantastic even today. Unfortunately, its health rating is basically dead. Golden Sun is without a doubt one of the most beloved series to ever grace the Game Boy Advance, and that's really saying something. The first game and its sequel are incredibly highly regarded. Unfortunately, the third entry suffered a very different fate. The series' final title came on the Nintendo DS, and while it wasn't exactly hated, it wasn't very well liked either. Camelot is still around, though their focus has largely been on Mario sports titles as of late. Still, one bad entry shouldn't be enough to thoroughly doom a franchise like this, especially when the Nintendo fans are clamoring for a sequel to so much. Sadly, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest from either Nintendo or Camelot in reviving this one. Hopefully that'll change someday, as protagonist Isaac did manage to get himself an assist trophy in Smash, but that's far from enough to consider this one still alive. Next, golf. Nintendo is actually one of the major pioneers in the golf video game pantheon. It was their original Famicom Golf that popularized the power meter for swinging the club. It doesn't look like much by today's standards, but golf really is an important piece of video game history. It was a tremendous success in Japan, and even though it was sort of dated when it came to the US, it still managed to perform admirably. And its health rating is okay? So Nintendo doesn't really make golf simulators anymore, at least not really. Nintendo followed up golf with NES Open a few years later, but that game was technically the unofficial start of the Mario Golf series, maybe? Some people would argue that golf actually stars Mario, but I'm not sure about that. NES Open, though, absolutely does, but we will cover Mario Golf later. What makes golf not entirely dead is a different franchise entirely. Sports. Wii Sports, Switch Sports all contain different flavors of golf, and it is directly based on the original NES Golf, right down to including courses from that original Famicom classic. So no, Nintendo may not be in the market of realistic golf simulation anymore, but the series lives on in spirit. Now let's look at Good Job. Good Job is one of Nintendo's more recent IP, having launched on Switch back in 2020. It's a rather funny job simulator that functions as a sort of puzzle game where you have to perform specific tasks in an office environment with little to no regard for the safety of anyone or anything around you. It's got a great simplistic aesthetic, a fun sense of humor, and plenty of very amusing chaos. Its health rating is hard to say. So Good Job was developed by Paladin Studio, who is very much still around. They aren't owned by Nintendo or anything, but Good Job seems to be, so if it performed well enough, it's entirely possible that Nintendo could commission a sequel someday. It is hard to say how well the game sold, though, as that information isn't readily available, but it seems to have earned a decent following on its own. I think it'll resurface at some point. Finally, that leads us to Gumshoe. Back in the before times, if an even semi-successful home console existed, there was almost invariably a light gun peripheral for it. But while most light gun games of old were variations on target shooting affairs, sometimes some crazy person would try to do something completely different, and that's exactly what Gumshoe is. This is a platformer. Well, actually it's an auto runner from way before that term was even a thing. Your character, the titular Gumshoe Mr. Stevenson, moves forward automatically, and it's up to the player to shoot him in order to make him jump. You can also shoot the various enemies and obstacles in his way, making it a game unlike almost anything else on the NES. Its health rating, though, is basically dead. Gumshoe may be an excellent concept and even have a killer soundtrack, but this game is tough. Actually, making it past the first stage alone can be a very daunting challenge, and audiences didn't take too kindly to that. Gumshoe hasn't been referenced outside of some light mentions in Smash Bros. Since its launch. No virtual console, no NSO, no nothing. This is a bummer, because it's such a neat concept that for sure could be expanded on with modern iteration, but that ain't happening. Yes, this is Nintendo we're talking about, and anything is possible, but I would be genuinely shocked if we ever saw Gumshoe again.
Well, there you have it. That is our check-in with Nintendo's properties that start with the letter G, and they're doing okay, I suppose. There are so many questions. Geist seems to me like the kind of thing that has a lot of potential. Golden Sun. There's a lot of fandom for Golden Sun. How have we not seen a new Golden Sun since the Nintendo DS? I don't know, man. Lots of questions out there, but I guess time will tell. You never know what Nintendo's going to do next. In the meantime, we'll check in next time with a letter, let's see, of G, H. We've got H coming up. I think we're covering H and I in the next one because there's just not a lot of both those letters, so we'll combine them into one. Either way, thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe, share, and let me know down in the comments what are your favorite Nintendo games that start with the letter G. Thanks again. On behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.